The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the sweet idiot fucking nerd baby that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Best line in the whole thing.
Yeah, so this week we're talking about Frankenstein's Hungry Dead, as promised.
Another Tubi.
Yeah, this one's on Tubi. And I like I said last week, I didn't know anything about it. And as soon as I pressed play and saw that it was a Wild Eye, I feel like we just had a Wild Eye one a couple weeks back, and I was like,
yeah, we've had a wild time with Wild Eye for sure.
Yeah, their track record's not great, and so I was a little nervous getting into this, but it's not bad. It's not good.
No, not at all.
But it's not as bad as some of the stuff I've seen from Wild Eye. It felt like people were making some choices and trying to do something here. It didn't feel like a cash grab like some of their stuff feels like.
Yeah, no, it actually seems like these people, everyone in this movie was trying, which is a surprise.
Yeah, it's definitely a little tropey, we've got a bunch of high school kids being played by adults, and they're all, basically one-dimensional trope things. We have, like, the punk girl and the nerd girl and the mean girl, and...
apparently the gay guys. By the way, heads up, they're slurs, but they're also reclaimed slurs, I would have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, there are two gay characters here, like a couple, and yeah, we will hear the F slur once or twice, but like they seem, like again, kind of like last week, it doesn't feel like they're being mocked for what they are. Like,
no.
They're as three-dimensional as any of the other characters in this, so
which is surprising and refreshing.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is a movie firmly placed in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a recently made movie, but it is absolutely very 80s, and the clothes that all the characters are wearing, and no one has cell phones. I mean, it's got a very 80s vibe to it for sure.
I feel like the character that is known as Ash or Ashley is absolutely, she's wearing Freddy Krueger's sweater. Right?
Yeah.
And I think Berman is wearing one of the jackets of the Frog Brothers from Lost Boys.
Oh,
I may be wrong. I may be adding more to this than it deserves.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. I mean, like, from everything we see in this wax museum that's sort of our main setting, they're clearly, like, nodding to all kinds of, like, classic horror here. So that makes sense.
Yeah. I think this movie really loves Dawn of the Dead because of some of the kills that occur in it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Or maybe it could... I think they also give a nod to Jess Franco in the credits, so it could be some of his movies as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, let's get down to it. I think we've given... gore. By the way, gore, slurs, Nazis?
Yeah.
There are your warnings.
It's hard to get away from Nazis with Frankenstein stuff, but yeah, this one leans into it particularly.
It leans into it and headbutts it a couple times.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get this party started. So we're going to start off with a shot of a lady, a young woman, but her name's going to be Kathy or Catherine. We're going to find out later. She's laying in bed, and we get creepy, like, it's basically Nightmare on Elm Street music, right?
Yeah. And she's, like, kind of tossing and turning. It seems like she's having nightmares of some kind.
But it seems to be like of a guy walking through a, like, haunted house.
Yeah. And this is, it's like a spooky wax museum. I this is set in Salem, Massachusetts. I think this is probably an actual wax museum in Salem, Massachusetts. I feel like this is definitely an existing thing that they're just using. They definitely did not make this.
I think they kept away from probably the more modern figures because I'm sure they're in there. But also, like, we're gonna butt up against some anachronisms if this is in the mid '80s for sure.
Yeah. So he's walking around. We're seeing some various wax figures of horror icons.
Yeah,
but somebody's
shots of Christopher Lee as Frankenstein.
Yeah. There's a lot of Frankenstein stuff in here. We'll see Peter Cushing a lot and everything. We can tell, like, from the camera angle, somebody is watching this guy as he wanders around. And then he pulls out a can of spray paint. He's going to do some graffiti somewhere in the museum. But something grabs his legs and he, like, falls to the ground and is, like, dragged away. We don't see what pulled him away.
And it's like Catherine sensed this because this is when she, like, leaps up screaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A la, once again, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And that takes us right into credits, and the whole credits is just shots of this wax museum. Various horror icons.
Kurt Barlow from, what's it called?
Salem's Lot.
Yeah. Carrie.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of Carrie. I can't. We see Elvira at some point. Like but the whole credits wisely they just just show us, like, take us on a tour of the museum. Like you said, I bet in real life there are modern horror characters that wouldn't fit in the '80s of this movie that they just had to shoot around.
Well, there is one that, like I said, there's one that we're gonna see when the kids get to the wax museum that I have a slight issue with, and it kind of narrows down the window of when in the 80s this occurred.
Okay.
All right. But yeah, so we go to Catherine's room, and like you said, she has pictures of this guy, but she also has, telling us that this is the 80s, posters of Duran Duran. We have John Cryer. Who's the third one? I didn't even catch that because I was like, John Cryer, how long has it been since he's been a sex symbol?
Right, yeah. And she's got, like, he's the guy who we saw in the dream. She has a bunch of missing posters for him she grabs a handful of them and leaves the room, and then we just cut to a classroom. And I originally thought this was college just because of the age of the actors.
Yes.
And just the vibe of even, like, the classroom looks like a college classroom. But as it goes,
I have never been to a high school classroom that had steps.
Yeah,
like
it looks like a lecture hall for sure, but it seems, as it goes, it's pretty clear that this is high school, but we have a teacher here who is berating this group of students. It kind of feels Breakfast Clubby, like we find out they're all in detention, and it's like a wide variety of trope type characters, and the teacher just kind of goes from kid to kid, like, insulting them.
Or couple. As the case may be.
Yeah, he drops the F slur in relation to the gay couple,
Sam and Troy.
Yeah, and he's annoyed that the goth girl always tries to talk about her favorite bands in her classwork.
She compares, like, what would you say, like Napoleon to I don't know, Blackie Lawless or something like that. I don't know. That's a bad example for sure. Or
but it's
maybe
that
like
kind of
Dio,
thing
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And she's in the classic kind of Hollywood style. She's kind of goth. She's kind of metal. She's kind of punk. She's just like all of the above. Wears spiked collars and stuff.
She doesn't know where exactly on the ratio or where she falls, right?
Yeah. And then we've got a know-it-all nerd that the teacher is like, I'm tired of you always having all the answers. Can you limit your, raising your hand to like twice a class instead of every, 30 seconds or so?
Right. And then Ashley stop being a mean girl and being stupid about everything. And also, can you tell your shirtless boyfriend Colton not to show up? Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Yep. We got just a dumb jock sitting there in class without a shirt on.
Yeah, so let's go over this. He yells at the gay couple just for being gay, basically. And, well, of course, also being PDA, public displays of affection. Then he yells at the goth and the nerd for being good students.
Right, yeah. For being engaged in the text. And,
right.
And, yeah, like, I don't know why they're in detention. There's never... an explanation for something bad that they did, especially the nerd girl. I'm sure the goth girl gets up to goth stuff
nefarious goth stuff.
But yeah, there's never any explanation for why they're there. And obviously the mean girl, I'm sure she's, picking on other students and bullying and, whatever. But yeah, we never really get any kind of explanation for why they're here.
Right, but they do get a choice. They could stay in detention or go on a field trip to the wax museum.
Yeah, he thinks this is
punishing them? Or is this a bribe? Which one is this?
Yeah, I mean, because he kind of implies that, this would be an educational trip, and that would kind of balance out the punishment. But they're going to, a horror-themed wax... This is not an educational museum.
No.
It almost more seems like, I want to go to this, and if you go with me, then I'll... Yeah, it's unclear.
Now, that I'll buy.
Yeah.
Because if I was that student, I'd be like, fuck yeah, we're going to the wax museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's kind of what they do, because we cut straight from him giving this offer to all of them there together at the Wax Museum. Mm-hmm. And the teacher introduces them to the tour guide, Mr. Frank.
Charles Frank.
Yep. He's the director of the museum, and Charles Frank right away starts giving them the tour.
Okay, so this is my issue. So we then have a statue of Beetlejuice in the background. Okay? Now, I don't know why this sticks in my craw, but it does. And I used that phrase, which is funny in and of itself. But anyway, the point is, Beetlejuice didn't come out till mid-'88, right?
Okay.
Almost the end of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means this is in 88 or 89, because I don't think Duran Duran survived the push to the 90s.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know why this bothered me so badly, but it did.
Yeah, that is an interesting choice.
Yeah.
But Mr. Frank is talking about Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho, and then he asks if they've seen that.
Has anyone seen Psycho?
Yeah, and he's a stereotypical German accented guy. He's got an eye patch. He's just creepy as hell for no reason.
Yeah. Well, there is a reason, but
right. Yeah,
that's a later thing, right?
And he eventually is like, okay, let's move on to we'll go to the Dracula display, and that we have Christopher Lee as Dracula. Was there a Bela Lugosi in there too? But there's definitely
Christopher Lee mostly. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's Barlow from Salem's Lot, as you said.
Right, and Peter Cushing is Van Helsing.
Yeah, and the students are all kind of bored and whispering amongst themselves while Mr. Frank's giving them the tour.
Right. Sam says ominously, "I would prefer to be stabbed than to be."
Right. And we find, surprisingly, the person mostly into what's going on here is not the goth punk girl. It's the mean girl who is like, I've always had this fantasy of having sex in a wax museum.
What? That is the gothest shit I've ever heard, man.
Yeah.
Aside from a graveyard, wax museum's got to be up there, right?
Yeah, and her jock boyfriend is like, wait, what? And she's like, no, it would be so hot. And he's like, no, that sounds weird, but...
Right, it smells like death in here. And she's like, I know, that makes it so much better.
But he is a high school boy, so if sex is on the table, he's like, all right, fine, wherever, it's got to be more comfortable than the back of my car or whatever, so sure.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah, and so we also have Kathleen, the nerd girl, who is trying to get... to hang up some of her missing persons posters around the museum. And both Mr. Frank and the teacher are both like, no, that's not what this is for. I think the professor's like, this kid ran away. You need to get over it and stop hounding everybody about it. You're just annoying everybody at this point.
Right. And of course, the goth girl Zoe does drop a slur. She actually calls Sam. Does she call Sam the H word, or does she call... No, she's talking about Ryan, Catherine's boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
She calls him a H word.
Yeah.
And says that he didn't want to be with you anyway.
Yeah. There's kind of this, debate, obviously Catherine being the nerd girl, everybody's sort of picking on her.
Yeah. But so we're establishing everyone's awful and needs to die, right?
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
And there's some confusion. So Ryan is the name of the missing kid, the kid we saw at the beginning in the sort of nightmare flashback. But it's unclear what Kathleen's relationship to Ryan is. people, everyone's saying that she had a crush on him and that he didn't really like her, and she is like, no, he was just my friend. Like, but she does seem to be very invested in him. I mean, of course, if you're a high school kid and your best friend or even a sort of acquaintance friend goes missing, you're probably going to be upset about that.
Yeah, but we're going to find out they're definitely more than just friends.
Yeah. And we kind of go from this sort of tour thing to like, everybody's gone home for the evening, and we have
out loud. Ashley's like, "Hey, let's come back in, do a B&E, and we're gonna fuck in the wax museum."
Yeah, and Colton's like, "All right, sure, let's do it."
Yeah.
And we go straight from that to her arriving home, where her sort of abusive alcoholic dad or stepdad is watching the news, which is a report about Ryan continuing to be missing.
Right. And to prove Ash isn't all that bad.
Yeah, this is, like, we often kind of see this where, like, oh, the bully kid is actually being bullied by their family, and it's kind of trickling down or whatever. Yeah. And that's pretty much what goes on here. This dad is a shithead to her. He also is like, I don't know why they're trying to find this Ryan. My tax dollars are going to police trying to find this idiot missing kid. So he just sucks. Like, he's just a bad dude all around.
I know this guy.
Yeah, and he's also shitty to Ashley. And
he says, people in your generation, you're just worthless. And
yeah. And so she just kind of is like, fuck you, I'm leaving. And she walks outside where Colton is waiting for her. And they go straight to the wax museum.
Yep. And it's time for some sex. Also, weird that, like, apparently, I don't know if the guy flubbed his lines, but Colton is weirdly overdubbed in this section. Maybe there were noises in the background. I don't know.
Yeah. And he does get a pretty good joke in here, though. Like, she, continues with that she wants to have sex in this spooky museum, and he's like, there's a word for people like you. And she's like, what is it?
I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's long.
I'm sure it would be hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
And then we get another sort of joke. Like, they get there, and their method of breaking in is that when they left, she shoved some chewing gum in the lock so that it wouldn't latch. And that works. So, but she pulls it.
We're gonna gloss over the fact that she just takes it out and just pops it right back in her mouth.
Yeah, she starts chewing it, and Colton looks at her like in disgust, and she's like, "What? I've had worse things in my mouth."
Yep.
And he's like,
and bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. She calls him Shrimpy, so
that's even got to be mean to her boyfriend. She's like, "Yeah, dream on, Shrimpy." And so that they head inside, and what is going on here? They have this weird flirtation where they're like dancing in like a weird way, and she's like, "What if I give you a little of this?" And he's like, "Yeah," and then what about a little of that? And it's really, really strange. Like, it is not sexy in any way.
But it does feel true to the teenage sexual experience, right? Everything's fucking awkward.
Yeah, there's a playfulness here. I would say, like, it does ring true to, like, I guess, them being sort of these tropes of, like, the mean girl and the jock seems weird, because this feels a little more real than how they are otherwise portrayed.
Yeah, I think, once again, we're trying to humanize these people before awful things happen to them.
Yeah. It leads to, they end up in, like, a storage room where there's just, like, a bunch of wax dummies, and they're making out. And then there's one dummy in the corner that, as a viewer, we can tell is obviously not a dummy. It is just a guy
literally wearing
there.
There are two that are wearing, one's wearing Zoe's costume, one's wearing Sam's costume, so it's like, oh, okay. They just got masks on their face. And then there's this weird random third one that's just standing there by itself.
Yeah, and this is like a guy who's kind of like got a punk goth kind of aesthetic going on. Eventually, or like, like, I think Colton is like, that guy looks weird. That doesn't look like a wax. And Ashley's like, yeah, you're being silly.
I know what movie he's from, right? But I can't recall the name.
Yeah. And in the course of this, she calls Colton a slur that is like, it's so archaic at this point. Like, and it doesn't. Okay, I'm just gonna say it because, like, there's no way to even. She calls him a zipper head, which is a slur from like Vietnam and Korea era wars in reference to Asian people. And
really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so like, because I was like, I think I remember that word from like Full Metal Jacket and stuff, and so I looked it up, and yeah, it's a slur that soldiers used for their enemy combatants, because when they would shoot them in the head, their heads would explode, and it looked like they had been unzipped. So it's specifically a reference to like combatants, but it kind of slowly just morphed into being a slur for, specifically Korean and Vietnamese Asian people. But like, I don't think it is in any way still an actively used term at all.
No,
but
like for a while there, I thought it was just a basic like stupid thing that older people said, right?
Yeah,
like
and
just a way of calling them idiot or fool or something like that.
Yeah, I think the only time I've heard it in recent, and this is I guess still even like 10 years ago or whatever, is that Gran Turismo Clint Eastwood movie about the the racist Vietnam War vet slowly befriending his Asian neighbor or whatever. I don't know. I mean, in this context, Colton is not Asian. There's no Asian character in this whole movie. I don't. Maybe it's one of those things that it's slowly been like, its original meaning has lost all meaning, and it just now is a slang term for an idiot. I don't know, but I thought it was worth mentioning at least anyway, because I was like, what the hell is going on here?
Listen, don't say this podcast doesn't educate you. It's about awful things.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, but so soon after she calls him that, of course, the actual real guy that's not a dummy jumps and scares them, and then we get the reveal that the whole class has all come to, they heard that that they were going to sneak in to have sex, and they wanted to cause trouble. Because
they were so silent about that, right? I feel like even Frank should have been like posting a security guard outside, being like, no, we know what you kids are here for. Get the fuck out. But yeah. And we learned that this guy is called Vermin, from Zoe's favorite band, Rectal Rot.
Right. Which, again, sounds like a metal band name, but as we go, like, we will hear some of Rectal Rot's music, and they're just like a pop-punk band. Like,
right.
But, yeah, so we have the whole class now kind of gathered together, and, Ashley's like, oh, you got, like, we were here to, get up to sex, and you're ruining everything. Yeah. And then we find that Mr. Frank is elsewhere in the wax museum. He has a lab, and he's working on the corpse of Ryan. That obviously he is the one who took Ryan.
And he injects it with something that looks like piss. We'll say apple juice, because why not? It's definitely not glowing green. It's definitely an amber yellow. So it might even be beer. Who knows?
Yeah.
All the above.
But he does hear laughter off in the distance, obviously our detention kids, but it doesn't deter him. He just continues with his work.
Right. So maybe he was expecting them.
Yeah.
Who knows? Vermin and Colton get into a little bit of an argument over Vermin scaring the shit out of Colton.
Yeah. And then even, so we have the whole detention group except for Kathleen, but then she pops in, and she, knew that they were going to break in, and she's like, I know that Ryan talked to you all before he went missing. Just tell me what he said. Maybe it'll help get to the bottom of things.
Right.
And Ashley's like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. Fuck you. I don't care about this whole thing. Like,
because she's a mean girl, right?
Yeah. So she's like, me and Colton are going to continue with what we came here for. So, basically, fuck you guys. We're going to go over here. Leave us alone.
Yeah. And then Sam and Troy are like, fucking, we're going to go fuck.
Yeah, might as well, since we're here and we're high school students and we are in a place with no adults. I mean, I've been there. High school, anytime you get some time to yourself, you got to try to take advantage of it.
Right. And then all of a sudden Vermin starts affecting a British accent and starts using British slang.
Yeah, he tells Zoe, he's like, hey, you want to go snog? And she's like, sure. And when they're like headed to where they're going, Zoe's like, I've been meaning to ask you, where did you choose the name Vermin? Where did that come from?
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't choose the name. Society branded me with this badge of shame, and I wear it with honor.
There is no way this kid's parents aren't like upper middle class, or at least, firmly middle class, right?
100%, yeah.
Right.
And so then we go back to Ashley and Colton, who have found a coffin, and Ashley's like, this is the spot.
We're fucking in this coffin. And Colton was like, this is the kind of thing you go straight to hell for.
Yeah, that's a little too far. And she's like, if you're willing to go that far with me, I might let you go further than any man has gone before with me.
We're going to do butt stuff.
Yeah, and he's like, all right, sure, we'll do it. That sways him.
The man thinks with only one organ.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
not the brain. Yeah. Well, apparently the goth couple has set up close enough that they can hear Ashley's orgasms.
Yeah, and that grosses Zoe out, so she's like, let's pop in your recent demo tape and listen to it so we don't have to hear them. And that's when we hear Rectal Rot is just like a pop punk band.
Right. But they're moshing it out to it, you know?
Yeah, and then we go back to Frank in his lab, and he can hear this music playing, and he's like,
those fucking kids!
Yeah. And of course, Ashley and Colton also hear this, so Ashley's like, they're going to get us caught. So she's like, stay right here, I'll be right back. Classic, I'll be right back, things aren't going to go well here. So she leaves Colton in the coffin and goes to yell at Zoe and Vermin.
But surprise, surprise, this is normally where Ashley would get got, but instead, Colton, the one who stays behind, is the one who gets got.
Yep, he is dragged away, like, pretty much the second Ashley is out of frame. So then we have Ashley yelling at Zoe and Vermin, and they're like, we should probably all just leave. And they're like, well, we'll have to walk past Colton anyway. Let's grab him and let's get out of here. We don't want to draw too much attention. Yeah,
and this is when Katie tries to leave through the front door.
Yeah, and it's locked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, okay, well, we can all go out the back way then. And she's like, well, I couldn't go that way because I didn't want to interrupt all the fucking. But I guess since that's all over with, we can all head out that way now.
But now Frank gets to surprise Colton with his latest attraction.
Yeah, he's got him like pinned to the floor, and I really like Colton's like, wait, you're that boring museum tour guide. Well, fuck you, boring museum tour guide.
Yeah, I know. I loved it. It was really good.
Yeah,
but he gets eaten by some faceless people or melted face people.
Yeah, so this, I feel like there's a lot of people who argue about, is the Frankenstein monster a zombie? And I usually say no. This movie is yes, definitely what's going on here is our mad scientist keeps trying to make a cognizant Frankenstein monster, but he keeps making zombies instead.
Yeah.
And so he's got this room full of them that he throws Colton to, and Colton is instantly just, ripped apart in classic zombie movie style.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
Yeah. I think as Frank's closing the door on him, he's like, speaking in your generation's charming vernacular, see you on the flip side.
And this is when K-Dog gets out and she finds the back way out, and she sees her teacher in his car arguing with someone.
Yeah,
presumably his girlfriend.
Some woman, yeah. And so she's like, oh no, she like rushes back in, shuts the door, and she's like, our teacher, is Mr. Is it Mr.
Jefferson?
Jefferson?
Ron Jefferson.
Yeah, Mr. Jefferson's right outside, and it looks like he's coming this way. And they're like, oh shit, okay, we gotta hide. So now everyone's kind of like in a panic.
Right. Then we cut to the inside of the car where his partner is like, hey, yeah, I understand you're here for the kids. And he's like, yeah, they said they were going to come back here and do some fucking. And she's like, well, hurry up, because I really want to get to the key party.
Which I feel like key party, I mean, I don't think key parties, I don't think they were ever really as much of a thing as like the idea of a thing, but they're more of a 70s thing than an 80s thing anyway.
Yeah.
But
they're older, so maybe they participated when they were younger. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, there's no real payoff on this. It's just, it's funny that like this teacher and his wife or girlfriend or whatever are swingers apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have, Ashley's freaking out, like we got to hide, but where's Colton? What are we gonna do? And they, so they're all kind of scrambling, trying to find a hiding place. We meanwhile have Frank, who is still, angry that all these teens are bothering. He's got this project he's working on.
Right. These kids are fucking entitled. They think they rule the world. I'll show them who rules the world.
Yeah. And then we go to the gay couple who have, when they wandered off earlier, they have just kind of been by themselves. They're having a much more successful time at what they're up to than Ashley and Colton did.
Yeah, but they brought a partner. They brought a third.
Yep, they're having I guess they're having a quote-unquote threesome on top of a wax dummy.
And part of it starts coming off.
Yeah,
which I was ready. I was like, all right, there's going to be a body underneath this. Nope.
But yeah, it's just melting from body heat, and pieces of it are falling off.
I mean, that'll do it.
And at some point, they like get up and they start pretending to be cats, and they're like hissing and meowing at each other.
They play kitty cats at each other right before.
Yeah, and one of them at some point describes this whole thing as being like a fucktacular good time, which I thought was a great term.
That's a great line, right? But because Frank knows he's in an 80s horror movie, even though it's clearly an early 2000s or 2010s horror movie, he looks at the camera and goes, "Here we go," and flips the switch.
Yeah. But in our kind of classic Frankenstein thing, it doesn't seem to work. His creation doesn't come to life.
Right, but something under a towel starts mocking him?
Yeah. Big whoop. We're introduced to Fritz. The classic sidekick name that we've often heard before. But this time around, Fritz is a decapitated sidekick who,
his head's in a pan.
Yeah, in kind of Reanimator style.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this is a Herbert West right here.
Yeah. And Fritz just is like mocking him, like, big whoop, you tried, you failed, like, you just keep doing this, you just, and what is, also in sort of a classic trope, we have these zombies, obviously, but we're never going to say the word zombie, because zombie movies just
can't say zombie.
Yeah, I don't know why, and he calls them whoopsie doodles, I think.
Yeah, your little whoopsie doodles.
Yeah, and we find out that Frank caused some sort of lab explosion that ended up killing Fritz.
He left the iodine heating on the Bunsen burner while he was having an argument with his wife.
Yeah, and but he's like, "Hey, well, I mean, at least I saved your life." And he's like, "No, you didn't. I'm a head on a tray. This is not a life."
Right. I prepare for the sweet release of death. Right.
Yeah, and Frank's like, "Shut up! I don't have time for you." He covers him back up with a blanket, and we just hear him being like, "Please, just let me die."
Aw, poor Fritz.
Yeah. And then we go back to the gay couple who suddenly are surprised by some zombies, and one of them gets got, and the other one manages to get away. But
Troy is the one who literally gets scalped. Like, the zombie latches onto his head and peels back his scalp.
Mm-hmm.
With the brain cap or the skull cap.
Yeah, and so we have one who's escaped, but he's obviously pretty traumatized by having seen his boyfriend get killed by zombies.
Yeah.
And in fact, he's screaming so much the rest of the gang comes running in, and they see the tail end of this zombie killing. So now the whole group knows there's something bad happening here that's beyond just spooky museum curator guy.
Everyone's freaking out. Vermin gets he brushes everyone off, and he gets latched onto by one of the zombies trying to act like a hero.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't. But Ash does come in with the face punch to save him. She punches one of the zombies right in the face and saves him.
Yep, so they all get away, but now we, again, classic zombie trope thing. We know Vermin has been bitten. And
he's going to be a zombie. But maybe not. Who knows? These don't seem like the infectious type, right?
Yeah. I was curious how this was going to play out, and it plays out differently than I expected. But they do manage to all get away, and then we also see that Mr. Jefferson has come in at this point. He also sees a different batch of zombies and tries to run away.
Well, he ends up grabbing an axe, and I'm like, oh, this is a prop axe. He's gonna completely fuck this one up. He's like, I'm a man of peace. I don't normally use violence. Immediately uses violence as he drives the axe into one of the zombies' chests.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter because there are so many of them that they just swarm him, pull him down to the floor, and this is where we get a very classic, where they pull apart his stomach and pull out his intestines. And
what was that sergeant's name from Dawn of the Dead? Nope, that is wrong. It's Day of the Dead. I'm sorry. Not Dawn. Dawn is in the mall.
Yeah. Day is the soldiery one.
Captain Henry Rhodes. That's him. Captain Rhodes.
Okay.
That's the guy.
Yeah. So while Mr. Jefferson is being ripped apart, the students manage to find a little side room where they're able to barricade themselves in. So they're holed up, also a classic zombie movie trope thing. Meanwhile, we go back to Frank, who is talking to a photograph of his dead wife.
Listening to what can only be described as Nazi music, right?
Right. And he's like, am I a bad person for wanting to change the world? And,
I was considered inhumane by Hitler himself. He dismissed me.
Right. So you may not be a bad person for wanting to change the world, but if you're doing it using methods that Hitler thinks are bad, yeah, you're a bad person.
Yeah, that pretty much says it, yeah. But we learned his wife's name is Alma, and he's like, I really could use, you cheering me on one more time, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden we hear, "Mrrr," and he's like, oh, thanks, honey.
Yeah, so he reveals that, basically he knew that she would be okay if he turned her into a zombie. She would understand. Because she was just so supportive of his work that even that was okay with her.
Yeah, all supportive spouses are okay with being turned into zombies, for sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so we go back to our teens in their barricaded room. They're helping Vermin with his wounds. And he says that, when he was 15, he got a stick and poke tattoo of the Germs logo.
With India ink, a.k.a. Printer, or the old printer, or typeset ink.
Yeah. And he's like, this bite hurts worse than that. So, just as a little aside here, there, 80s punk bands, a lot of them did have logos. That was very common at the time. The Germs didn't really. They only released one album, and the album cover was just a big blue circle. That would be a really boring tattoo. I can't imagine that's what he means. But yeah, the Germs, fascinatingly, were the original band that Pat Smear was in, who went on to be a secondary member of Nirvana and an on-again, off-again member of the Foo Fighters.
Right.
So, this is a good band to reference, but as a band with a logo, it's kind of silly because they don't really. Right. But I did just think that was kind of funny.
I mean, I guess you could call it anything, right? Maybe his friend just fucked up and just put a big blue circle on him.
Yeah. Yeah, but either way, he's saying this hurts worse than a stick poke tattoo, so got to be pretty painful.
Yeah.
And we also have, Ashley's trying to calm people down. We've got some people are kind of in shock. I mean, obviously, seeing
Sam's losing his shit.
Yeah. After seeing his boyfriend eaten by zombies, and they're like, surely we saw Mr. Jefferson. I'm sure he got out. He's probably getting us help right now. Mm-hmm. And Kathleen's like, I don't think we should rely on that. I think we need to help ourselves here.
Right. By the way, I like that Ash is now officially the leader after being the mean girl.
Yeah, she kind of transitions. I mean, she's still kind of mean, but she definitely transitions into just being like, I got to get everybody out. Once we get out of here, then we can go back to our normal tropes. But for right now, we just got to team up, basically.
Yeah, but like you said, Kitty is now looking for the emergency exit.
Mm-hmm. They end up finding a little secret passage, and this is, the room that they're in was through a secret passageway door, and now they find another door, and they're like, a secret passage inside a secret passage?
What's a twist?
Yeah. And then we go back to Frank, who is now walking around the museum. He finds his zombies eating Mr. Jefferson, and is like, hold on, let me check and see if there's any parts that I can use before you finish him off.
Right. By the way, there's this weird clown in the background, Anthony. He has a yellow stripe with some red pom-poms. Why is he here? Who's this guy?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm sure we're not going to see him for at least another 5 or 6 years. So, yeah, it's Pennywise. It's clearly Pennywise. And the miniseries that this is referencing wouldn't have come out until, 92, 93?
Yeah, and we're definitely not in the 90s, no matter what. We maybe could have been 88, but certainly not the mid-90s.
No.
Yeah, and we...
but we learned that there are 3 zombies at least, with the third one being named Clarence. So he has 1, 2, and Clarence.
Right. So at this point, Mr. Jefferson's partner comes in, and she's like, I'm looking for Mr. Jefferson. Have you seen him? He was looking for his students.
Yeah, my Ronnie. Have you seen my Ronnie?
Oh, yeah. And Frank's like, "Oh yeah. I just saw him. He's yelling at his students, but I can take you to him." And she's like, "Yelling? I can't imagine him yelling."
Right.
Like,
the one thing this guy has been doing the entire movie.
Right. That's all he
can't
does.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mr. Frank's taking her that way, but like while they're going, he's like, "Let me give you a tour of the museum," and she's like into it. She's like, "I love wax museums," and so he's like super excited, like somebody cares about my thing. And he's having a great time giving her a tour. But then a zombie pops up and grabs her.
Right, chokes her to death.
Yeah, and Frank's like, "No, but I need her heart." And also,
but he queued it up so well for the zombie. Yeah. Like he was like, "Yes, this is. Let me take you to him right now." And then the zombie hops out and starts choking her.
Yeah,
it's like that was perfect, man. You need to coordinate better with your zombies. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah. He seems like more upset not about the heart than he is about like, man, I was having a fun time being a tour guide, and you ruined it for me. But he does. So now that she is dead, of course, he does go ahead and remove the heart, and we go back to the kids, and Kathleen is like, I don't know why I came here. This was obviously a bad idea. And now I've gotten into all this trouble, and she and Ashley start kind of going at it again. And she's like, did you kill Ryan? What happened? Why won't you tell me anything?
Right. Why the fuck would you think I would kill Ryan, right?
Yeah, she just laughs at that. And she's like, no, Ryan wanted to join, like, our cool group. And I told him that was a weird thing to just try to, like, ask to be recruited. But if he really wanted to, he needed to go spray paint my initials somewhere really cool.
Yeah.
So obviously that kind of takes us back to what happened at the beginning. We now kind of the pieces are falling into place.
Right, but we got to get out of here. So Zoe, you need to stay here with Vermin, and Sam, you're going to be the first one to go out this door, buddy.
Yeah. And so as they leave, we see that Vermin just kind of like falls unconscious from the pain or whatever.
Right. What is it he says? He's like, aside from Al, he's like, I don't think I could stand up or something like that.
Yeah. And so
it's always like, what happened to your accent?
Yeah. So Zoe ends up trying to follow after the rest of the gang to see if they can, obviously she can't do anything with Vermin, but she's still separated from them. And we get our, like the main group of Sam and Kathleen and Ashley. They find like a bedroom.
Right, where Sam reminisces about his first time having sex with Troy.
Yeah. And then Ashley sees a framed photo and is like, wait, look at this. This is that tour guide and with like his brother or something.
Right.
And
it says F, love your work, signed A. Hitler.
Yeah. She thinks it's his brother, but of course, Sam and Kathleen are like, that's Adolf Hitler, you idiot. What is wrong with you?
That's a really good gag, though.
Yeah. And then we go back to Zoe, who is still trying to, like, catch up with the gang. But instead, she gets cornered by Frank, who seems to chloroform her, maybe? He does something, like,
Yeah, he's like, hey, how do you like to smell my chloroform rag? And
and so, we lose her, and then we go back to the sort of surviving trio.
Where Sam is like, hey, there's this really small door here. Wonder what's behind this door. Yep. He opens it up, and immediately I don't know if she's legless, but the shorter zombie of Alma just goes, bah! Which is a funny scare. It's not a jump scare. It's a funny.
Yeah.
Funny.
She grabs Ashley and like pulls her back inside, and the door slams.
Right. It's like, oh, she's dead.
Yeah. Surprisingly, Kathleen's like, no, I'm not going to let that happen. She pulls the door back open. Starts hitting the Alma zombie and
cat brains Alma to death.
Yeah, and so Ashley manages to escape, and then we cut back to Frank, who is continuing to work on science. He's got Mr. Jefferson's head, and he's also got Zoe all like hooked up to contraptions. She's not dead; she's alive, but she's like connected to machinery at this point.
She's in an electric chair for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, you see. My name's not truly Frank. After he does his villain monologue, because that goes on forever. He's like, you see, my name's not truly Frank. It's Charles Frankenstein. Da, da, da. We knew. I mean, come on. He wasn't hiding it.
And Zoe's like, come on, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. And so, and then it ends up like Zoe and Fritz both are kind of like mocking Frank together, like making fun of him. And Frank gets tired of it, so he pulls out a drill and just drills a hole into Fritz's head. And
well, right before he's like, oh, thank God, it's about time.
Yeah. Sweet, merciful death.
Yeah. Like, I feel like if Charles Frankenstein was that evil, he just would have been like, no, this is just a lobotomy. you're gonna be fine after this.
Yeah. But he's like, well, since I'm getting rid of Fritz, maybe you can be my new assistant. I can teach you about science. And she's like,
no, I'll never help you.
Yeah, she's like, fuck science. I hate science. I don't want anything to do with it.
I love her so much.
Yeah.
But he's like, all right, fuck it.
Yeah, so he electrocutes her, and like one of her eyeballs explodes, and the other one seems to be kind of like sizzling.
Right, it pops out a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a disrespectful death for this goth lady. Come on.
Yeah. And then we cut back to Vermin, who just wakes up and seems to be fine. And he's like, Zoe? Where are you, Zoe? So he goes to
But he starts sucking his thumb. Like, this is a new character attribute that we haven't seen him from at all.
Yeah, I don't know if this is supposed to be like, we thought this was like a tough punk guy, but actually he's a big wimp. But
surprise! Most punk guys are big wimps. That's why they dress like that.
Yeah, and there was never any question that he was. I mean, like, right away, everything about him seemed fake. So, like, it's not a surprise that he would, be this cowardly character. Or whatever.
Right. I hope I don't offend anyone by saying that, but I feel like if you dress like in all black with like studded metal anything, you're either part of the leather daddy kink, or you really are just a soft little melon that needs your armor, right?
Yeah, there's definitely some projection here of like trying to outwardly look strong so you don't have to be inwardly strong.
Right.
But weirdly, so then he ends up just getting swarmed, or he finds a freight elevator, and when he opens it, there's a bunch of zombies, and they swarm him, pull him apart again, in the classic Day of the Dead style.
At least Vermin gets one kill with his bracers and the studs.
Yeah, and so he's dead now. So like, the bitten thing never went anywhere here. It's not a contagious thing. It's, usually we have this like, oh no, when are they going to turn and all that. But like, nope, that's not what's going on here. He just ends up dying. Well,
because we killed one bitten character off, we then have to cut to Ash, who's like, oh no, I think I'm a goner because I've been bitten as well.
So she's got like blood dripping down her face from her attack with Alma or whatever. Yeah. And Kathleen is kind of trying to comfort her while Sam is like trying to find a way out. He opens one door and is like, oh no, there's a lot of zombies in there, that we're not going that way.
Yeah, we clearly can't go there. How about this one door that we haven't even tried yet?
And he opens it, and there's just Adolf Hitler with kind of like the
electro brain.
Yeah, like Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. If you've seen, like, he's got like the clear dome where you can see the brain in it, and he's
Zombie Hitler.
Yeah, he's like, what the fuck? And he shuts the door, and he's like, we're not going that way. Like, and he's like, okay, wait. So the other way is our only option.
I've got one plan to do this. And then Kidney Beans is like, no, you're not going to do this, right? You're not going to do what I think you're going to do. Sure as shit, Sam is absolutely going to pick up Ash and throw her to the zombies.
Yep. So while the swarm of zombies is, attacking Ashley, Sam just grabs Kathleen and they kind of dash down the hall around and while Ashley's dying, she's really pissed at being used as bait.
Right.
And she turns back into the mean girl and is like yelling mostly at Sam, uses a few more homophobic slurs here, but it's kind of like, I get it. You're pissed at Sam. It's understandable.
I feel like at that moment it's like, fair.
Yeah.
Cruel but fair.
She ends up getting her tongue ripped out by one of the zombies, and that obviously quiets her down.
Yeah. I guess, sure, why not? She really wasn't. Like, she was a smart ass, but is she that verbose? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But that's a big fucking tongue. Like, I know tongues are longer than you think they are, but...
Yeah, this looks like they probably got a tongue, like a cow tongue or something, and used it. It's like, it's very long. So we end up with Kathleen and Sam. They've gotten through, and they end up in Frank's lab, where they find Zoe being eaten by a chained up zombie.
Right, what's left of her, that is.
Yeah. And then, Kathleen sees over on the lab table, there's Ryan. Yeah, so she's all, rushes over to him, is all like, maybe we can still save him or whatever.
Right, and I'm like how Sam at this point is like, oh man, at least we found Ryan, now we can get the fuck out of here, right?
Yeah,
we can be done with this place.
As you said earlier, he of course foreshadowed this, and he gets impaled. A wax museum spear just sticks out of his chest. Frank had snuck up behind him.
Yeah, but Casper does some quick thinking, and she just ducks underneath the lab table.
Mm-hmm. And we get the dying words from Sam, which is, "I always hated being a bottom."
Fair.
Yep. So Frank feels like he's gotten everything back under control. He goes back to doing his science. He's going to try to revive Ryan again, but he steps on a pair of glasses on the ground and is like, "Wait,
what is this?"
Yeah. So he looks under the lab table, and of course, there's Kathleen trying to hide. So he drags her out, ties her up, and he's like, "I'm going to make you watch as I perform my science."
Right. I'm going to see what you think of the new Ryan.
Yeah. And then we get, I thought this was kind of like a nice, so like...
I don't know why I call it nice. I know what you're talking about, but I get what you're saying, yeah.
So he decides to cut off Sam's ears.
Yeah.
And he's like, look at these lobes. They're pure Aryan perfection. Ryan had the ears of a lowly Jew.
Does he, though? I mean, I don't know what Jewish ears look like, comparatively speaking, but...
I think this was their way of like making him be racist while not using any like real stereotypes. It definitely.
Yeah, I know.
It reminded me of like in Flesh for Frankenstein when he was like obsessed with the Serbian Nazim, and kept going on about like pure noses, which is more of a racist stereotype when it comes to Jews. Here, like I don't think that ears are a stereotype of anyone, as far as I know. So it felt like a safe way to kind of be this without like actually using real. Just to remind you the guy's a Nazi. Yeah. And so while that's going on, like Kathleen's like, "What is happening? Who are you? What's going on?" And he goes back into his villain monologue and says, "I'm the great great grandson of Victor Frankenstein, and I continued my ancestors' work. My father and my father before me, and all that. We're trying to clear Victor's name and show that his work really mattered."
Right. Mary Shelley was just our family's biographer. Dun, dun, dun. We paid her to do this. To disparage our family.
Yeah. And he's like, soon, I'll show them all. I'll have the power of God running through my fingertips.
Yeah, I get to play God. I get to be God.
Yeah, yeah. Classic, villain monologues from a Frankenstein. But then he's like, I've tried several times, but my creations, they're no good. They don't have the brains that I want. But Ryan, he's a perfect specimen. I got him so fresh. It was really a gift that he snuck into the museum. So now is really my chance. Yeah.
Right. So, of course, Frank flips the switch. And guess what? He's alive. Holy shit, he's alive. I think this is my favorite delivery of the "he's alive" line.
Yeah, I really like that too. Yeah, like he's surprised by it, and then he's like, God himself would vomit with envy at the sight of my perfect, powerful creation.
Yeah, I know, I love it. You will be my ultimate weapon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then he starts telling Ryan, "Hey, do this thing where you stand up. Now extend this one hand just at my neckline, though. Okay. Now extend the other one at exactly the same height. Good. Let me just walk into your hands as you choke me to death."
Yep. So Ryan chokes him out, then manages to restrain him on the lab slab, and starts electrocuting him with his own equipment.
I'm offended. The man has one eye, and we don't get a pop from him.
Yeah, that would have made more sense, like with like we saw with Zoe,
right?
And so we get Frank's last words, which are "you motherfucker."
Fair. I mean, I can see that. But then Ryan stumbles towards Cardi, and he acts like he's going to murder her, but then all of a sudden he starts untying her.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he still kind of has the zombie-ish kind of, like, when he doesn't talk, he just kind of groans, and he's kind of like shambling around, but yeah, when he gets to her, he unties her, and it seems that he has some level of awareness. He's not a mindless ghoul, and he ends up kind of like guiding her, and they leave the museum together.
Right, and as they get outside, him and Katniss, they share a kiss, and he like relives that memory of a time earlier on when they were clearly on a date and kissing before.
Yeah, so we see them kiss when he looks to normal, and now we see them kiss while he's sort of like a zombie or whatever. And then, we just see them kind of walk away down an alley, just leaving the museum. And then we get sort of like our postscript scene sometime later. We see
Colton's head on the table.
Colton and Ashley, their heads are now in trays. They have survived. But as we saw when Ashley got attacked, her tongue got ripped out. So she's trying to talk to Colton, but like she can't, really enunciate because she doesn't have a tongue.
Yeah, and he's a himbo for sure.
This is just such a silly gag, but it really cracked me up. So she's talking, and we get subtitles so that we can see what she's saying. But somehow Colton is able to read the subtitles on the screen. But because he's a himbo, he can't read very well. So he's reading slow, and he's like, "Wait, are you saying something mean to me? Is that what's happening?" And she just keeps like insulting him, and
he took your head and only left me with your brain. Or he took your body and left me only with your brain. He's like, "Oh, thanks." Oh wait, no, you're being mean.
Yeah, and the sort of like final gag is like, "Wait, so what? Why are you? What happened to your tongue?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "What happened to your dick?" And then it just goes right to credits.
I love it so much. That was stupid but funny.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're a little too casual, some of the slurs there, but other than that, this is actually surprisingly entertaining.
Yeah. This is in no way a good movie, but it is a very fun movie. And, I think last time, I can't remember which, maybe it was Franken-Shark, but there was or Sharkenstein.
Yeah.
There was something we watched from Wild Eye, and the thing is with them, you just never know, because they kind of have a stable of directors, and some of them actually seem to like care and want to make super low budget movies that are fun, and some of them want to make super low budget movies so they can get more profit from them.
Right.
This one feels more in the fun camp, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
You never know with Wild Eye, but we've been lucky in the podcast at least that we've only found like relatively fun stuff from them.
For the most part, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, anything else we gotta talk about with this?
I think that's it. This one, it's not deep. It's a good time. It's on Tubi if you've got an hour and 15 minutes or whatever to kill.
Yeah, it's a quick run too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's kind of got so like Breakfast Club tropes mixed with like a zombie movie, just kind of loosely as a Frankenstein thing. But yeah, it's fun. And it's, there's, like we said, there's a little bit of gore, the zombie chest ripping kind of stuff. Beyond that, like there's not really like nudity or much like, overt sexual stuff. Like, we have Ashley who's very like, down bad for like having sex in a museum. But other than that, it's sort of, like safe for work, I guess. Other than the slurs, of course.
Yeah.
But, it definitely, it's one of those movies where like,
and the gore.
If you're, like the as far as like media literacy goes, there are slurs, but like it feels intentional. It's not like it's not that they're saying these slurs are okay. They are, we're supposed to be like, wait, why are they using these? This is bad, and then see them get punished for it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So interesting. All right, that's fair. So next week, let's do something once again slightly different. We've had a big cast, a big crew in this this episode. How about next week we pare it down a little bit? We've spent time with Frankenstein's hungry army, so let's spend time with just Frankenstein's creature next week.
Yeah. So this is another one that I just stumbled on Tubi. No idea anything about it, but maybe we'll keep being lucky. I know Tubi is a crapshoot when it comes to horror movies. They take a lot of like just the dregs that nobody else wants, but hopefully when it comes to Frankenstein stuff, we can usually find something to enjoy. So Yep. So it's just called Frankenstein's Creature. You can catch it over there and join us next week for that.
Absolutely. Where can they find us, Anthony?
Yeah, you can find us on all the socials at the Frankencast. Again, we've just joined TikTok, so you can find us over there. We're still kind of like getting that all kind of set up, but
Yep,
we'd love
I'm
to have
moving
you over
slow
there.
on it.
Yeah, and you can find us there. You can also email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, and you can find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where I think we've been doing some of our most fun stuff. We just finished the Punisher Frankencastle series, which ended really badly, but
So
we had
bad.
a great time talking about how awful it was.
Great setup, awful finish.
Yeah, and then we've been talking about the Creature series on Netflix, which I've been having a great time with, so you got time to jump in and catch up with those and ride along with us as we get closer to the end of that series. So we'd love to have you over there. There's over 100 episodes at this point that you can dig through, but always new stuff over there every week as well.
You definitely got, yes. It's definitely worth your time and your money for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, anything else to do?
I think that's it.
All right, well, in that case, to be continued.
Looks like you've survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.